Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. As-salatu was-salamu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa alayhi sallam. Nawina ta'lam ta'lim wa tadhakkar wa tadhkir wa nafu al-intifa' wa al-ifada wa al-istifada wa al-hath ala tamassuk bi kitab Allah sunnat rasulihi sallallahu alayhi wa sallama wa du'a lil-huda wa dilala ala al-khair ibtigha wajhi Allahi wa mardatihi wa qurbi thawabi subhanahu wa ta'ala. Subhanaka la ilma la illa ma 'allamtana innaka antal alim al-hakim wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Amma ba'd. Alhamdulillah. We're on page 18 in the English translation of mashallah the book's Lives of Man. We just want to try inshallah complement what Allah bless Ustad Muhyi, who Jazakallahu khair, who took the last lesson inshallah. So just to kind of like indulge me by complimenting what he did last lesson, to speak about now the stage of childhood. So we spoke about the stage of when we're in the womb of our mothers, and he goes on to say on page 18, man thus remains in his mother's belly until God wills him to come forth. This is the first part of his life in this world, in this dunya. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, God the Exalted, has mentioned the beginning of this life in his book, stating a man moves from stage to stage. ثُمَّ نُخْرِجُكُمْ طِفْلًا. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that when we extract them or take them from the womb as infants. And so he's going to speak here first and foremost about that moment where we literally now come into this world. And so he mentions the verse from the Quran, ثُمَّ نُخْرِجُكُمْ طِفْلًا, that we bring you forth or extract you from the wombs in the form of infants, ثُمَّ لِتَبْلُغُوا أَشُدَّكُمْ, until you reach what? أَشُدَّكُمْ, maturity. وَمِنْكُمْ مَنْ يَتَوَفَّى, and thereafter, or from there to this time, there will be from amongst you those who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes back to Him, i.e. before they reach old age. وَمِنْكُمْ مَنْ يُرَدُّ إِلَىٰ أَرْذَلِ الْعُمَرِ, and then from amongst you there will be those who reach what's known as أَرْذَلِ الْعُمَرِ, which is what? It's the age of when you start to now decay. And he says that's the worst of the age, i.e. when we start to now go into a state of decay. لِكَيْ لَا يَعْلَمْ min ba'di ilmin shay'a. So you come into this world as an infant, you go through the stages reaching maturity, where inshallah hopefully we have what's called rushd, where the mind starts to form and we develop as human beings. Then in the hikmah, the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He returns us back to a stage la ya'lamuna shay, i.e. you become now dependent, decrepitude. Okay? And then he goes on to say that when a human being is born, yakhruju sarikha, he will come out screaming. Why? Due to, in the Arabic, the word, which is why Dr. Mustafa has translated it like he's being stabbed by Satan. Lakza in Arabic. It's like a prick or a stab by Satan. The exception to this is who? Isa ibn Maryam. So only Jesus, the son of Mary, and his mother, upon them be peace, escaped this, for God guard them against it. And so the Prophet ﷺ said what? سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول, I heard the Prophet ﷺ say, ما من بني آدم, there is no single human being, إلا يمسه الشيطان, save that he will be touched, يمسه, touched by the devil. I said it's been translated here as what? Stabbed by the devil. من بني آدم مولود إلا يمسه الشيطان حين يولد, at the moment that someone comes out, which is why when a child comes out, it comes out what? سارخة, screaming, crying. So they come out, يَسْتَهِلُّ صَارِخًا مِنْ مَسَّ الشَّيْطَانِ. And this is described that why does a child come out crying? Because if we look at one of the exceptions to that is what? When we read the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ, that the Prophet comes out, they say رَافٍ رَأْسُهُ إِلَى السَّمَاءِ, gazing up to the seven heavens, facing the Qibla, on all fours. There's no mention of what? The cry there. There's no mention of the cry. So what does it mean when they talk about the hadh of shaitan, that the Prophet had known as the hadh of shaitan? Inshallah we'll speak about it shortly. But as a norm, the moment someone exits from the womb of their mother, يَسْتَحِلُّ سَارِخًا مِنْ مَسِّ الشَّيْطَانِ, that they will come out crying from the touch of the devil. غَيْرُ, and this is the hadith, غَيْرُ مَرْيَمْ وَإِبْنَتَهَا, save Maryam and her son. ثُمَّ يَقُولُ Abu Hurairah, then Abu Hurairah said what? Well, he's quoting who? He's quoting the mother of Maryam alayhi salam, Hannah. May Allah be pleased with her. Because Allah references the supplication that she makes for her children, her dhurriya. And obviously that was only Maryam alayhi salam, and then Maryam only had Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam. That what does she say? وَإِنِّي أُعِيذُهَا, that I safeguard her, or I give her over to you, bika وَذُرِّيَّتَهَا مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ الرَّجِيمِ, and her offspring from the devil in and of himself. So in istijaba, in response to the dua of Sayyidina Hannah, the mother of Mary alayhi salam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserved, safeguarded Mary, and likewise Isa alayhi salam, to being what? Touched by the devil. Okay? In an extension of the hadith, which is mentioned in another tradition, where the Prophet said, غَيْرَ عِيسَى بْنِ مَرْيَمَ ذَهَبَ يَتْعَنْ فَتَعَنَ فِي الْحِجَابِ. He's mentioned it likewise in the Nas of the Lives of Man, that the devil came to actually what? Strike, stab, yamus, touch Mary alayhi salam, and likewise Isa alayhi salam, وَتَعَنَ فِي الْحِجَابِ. But he could only engage a protective shield, like a veil, around Mary alayhi salam. And so Imam al-Qurtubi says, he goes, why does this quote-unquote phenomena take place? Okay, because there's lessons in this. First and foremost, he goes that Satan's touch at birth in the beginning. Why? Because it's like, I'm with you from birth. This is my endeavor to take control over you. And Allah protected Maryam because of what we just mentioned. And he says here, this is khususiyah for Mary, peace and blessings be upon her, and likewise Jesus, peace and blessings be upon him, by the barakah, by the blessings of the dua of Hannah. Okay, someone could ask the question, what? That why then, when we have the hadith that the Prophet ﷺ, that he was playing amongst youth at the age up until he was 5 in Bani Sa'd with the beloved Sayyidina Halimah Sa'diyah, and so Gabriel came to him alayhi salam, he placed him on the ground, shaqqa sadrahu, that he extracted his heart, wa akhadha hadh shaitan. And we would translate that as what? That he took the hadh of shaitan. The hadh in Arabic means what? Like the portion. And then Sayyidina Anas said that when the Prophet ﷺ's chest was put back together again, he goes, Kuntu ara mikhyat. Look at the words that he's using. I can actually see like the stitch line. It's literally like, you know how we say operations take place today? That there was a thin line that Sayyidina Anas ibn Malik, ta'ammala, I think about this person. He was known to what? Really reflect upon the physical disposition of the Prophet ﷺ. So for example, we speak about who's the one that describes, as well as he was the keeper, through his blessed mother Sulaym, the hair of the Prophet ﷺ. When we speak about the number of hairs that resided upon the face of the Prophet ﷺ, what were the different narrations as to the number? So some say 14, some say 17, some say there weren't more than 20 hairs on the blessed head and beard of the Prophet ﷺ. Okay, all those hadith come via who? Sayyidina Anas ibn Malik, may Allah be pleased with him. Right? And that shows you that what? That's someone that's literally reflecting, yata'ammal, like, pondering upon the physical creation of the Prophet ﷺ. And so here, he's saying what I would see, the mikhyat. Mikhyat literally means like the stitching, right? The line that was stitched on the chest of the Prophet ﷺ. Okay, well, how did the ulama, or some of the ulama, interpret this hadith to mean when they speak about hadh of shaitan? Because we said when the Prophet comes forth, there's no mention in the books of seerah about any type of crying. Where he himself saying in hadith, ma min bani Adam, that there's no one from the offspring of Adam alayhi salam, illa yamassu shaitan, save that the devil will what? Touch him, yamussuhu. That some of the ulama say that what? That Gabriel, so first off we're saying here that, okay, there's a khususiyah, something unique for who? Isa alayhi salam, Sayyidina Maryam. But likewise, we said that any type of khususiyah that was given to the prophets was given to Al-Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So they describe the removal, the extraction of the hadh of shaitan as what? That the Prophet ﷺ is the pinnacle of what? Mercy, rahmah. وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكِ إِلَّا رَحْمَةٍ لِلْعَالَمِينَ. That literally your only purpose is to what? Display mercy unto the entire corpus of creation. And that mercy resides where? In the blessed heart of the Prophet ﷺ. And so they say that when Gabriel came to him, وَأَخَذَ حَظَّ الشَّيْطَانِ, that he's taken the hadh, the portion of the mercy that the Prophet could have what? Displayed to the devil, and remove that. So that the devil is not, he's ar-rajim, isn't he? The accursed, the one that's matrud, expelled from the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so the mercy that the Prophet could have displayed towards the shaitan, to Iblis himself, that's what the hadh was removed. That portion of mercy even towards the devil from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so we say here what? That a child comes out crying. Okay? What do we learn from relation? What were the moments before that? The moments before that we spoke about in the last lesson about the people being in the womb. Right? Is someone paying rent in the womb? Is someone worried about the food or their sustenance in the womb? Is someone concerned about heating or cold in the womb? Look, this is why I described it. We said last lesson was what? Qararin makin. Qarar, the place that you are residing or stationary, makin. It's a safe space. But as soon as you come out now, what happens? A child in this childlike state that cannot articulate him or herself, it's all now about what? Talab, like a request or a sa'i, an effort to get something. Okay? So there's a difference between, look, Allah's telling you in the womb, look, there's this safety. There's no requirement for any type of sa'i, any type of struggle towards something. But as soon as you come out of the womb, from that moment, two things. First and foremost, the devil touches you at that moment. Right? I'm with you now till death do us part. Yeah? Which is why, again, look at the nafs versus the soul here. In that what? That the nafs is all about what? This type of crying. When you want something, cry. Yeah? We say it, so-and-so's throwing the toys out of the pram. We're not supposed to be childlike, are we? And that comes in contrast to what? So you have the devil telling you, the moment you come out of the womb, I've got you, I'm with you. What's the responsibility of the parent at that moment? So we counter this now. Now we address the soul. The nafs is being what? Quote unquote, touched by the devil. But now the father or the guardian has to do what? What do we recite in the ear of a newborn? The adhan in the right ear, and then the iqamah in the left ear. And think about that. Prior to, meaning if we spoke about the first world of the soul, and then that time in the womb, the moment that the child comes out, is it closer to the worlds prior, the stages prior, the world of the soul, or is it closer to the world, or does it have more experience, of the world of the dunya? It's closer to what? The world of the soul, isn't it? Yeah? That cosmos that exists within the womb. When the angel actually, comes to the womb, breathes we spoke about the four things that are written, and how the soul is then breathed into the child. So it's closer to the soul world. Why do we make mention of that? Because does the child understand Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar? Imam al-Haddad says here what? That you're reminding the child about that tawheed, that oneness. In saying what? He's saying the child in that form actually understands. Because otherwise, we do it as a religious practice, don't we? A child comes out, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. When you're saying Hayya ala salah, come to prayer. Think about what you're saying to a being that has existed for moments in this world. Come to prayer. Hayya ala falah, come to your success. Imam Haddad saying that the child in those moments understands, because it's closer to that soul existence. Alastu bi rabbikum, where the soul testified, am I not your Lord? Qalu bala shahidna. And so the adhan is given. It's like this duality now that's going to take place from the moment a child comes out to the moment it's in his or her grave. It's this constant struggle. Yeah, vices, reality is calling you to what? Harm, and inshallah noble, high ethical qualities calling you to what? Your higher purpose in life. From the moment you've come out of what? From the moment you come out of the womb. Like every person has what? A qareen, as the Prophet ﷺ said. And the qareen is not what? Some people may think, when I say qareen, what is the qareen? It's the devil, yuwaswisu ilayh. It's that Satan that whispers to you. And some people mistake that for what? The internal chatter that takes place within you. The qareen is literally a separate being. Why? Because we know the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that when from our mother Sayyidina Aisha radiyallahu ta'ala anha, that when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam departed one day from her apartment, what did she say? Ghirtu. What's ghayra? Like I started feeling this like jealousy. Where's my husband going? Okay, is ghayra a good thing? I can maybe understand the response based on the translation of the word. I'm saying that when she said ghirtu, I felt this ghayra. It's like, and I said she felt what? What did I say? Jealousy. And so ordinarily a response to that should be what? Jealousy is not a praiseworthy trait, is it? Obviously it's not. But is ghayra, because look, let me do the hadith and we'll come back to it. So she says what? Ghirtu, like I felt this ghayra. Where's my husband going? And so he sees her, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then he goes back to her and he asks her the question, Aghirti, did you feel like ghayra by seeing me leave? And she goes, why shouldn't I? Why shouldn't I feel ghayra over my husband when he leaves the house? And look what he says, Aja'aki shaytanuki. Meaning you're speaking to me in this manner, is your devil present with you? Right? Is your shaitan with you? Aja'aka shaytanuki. And so what? She goes, like, do I have a devil? Do I have a qareen? And the Prophet goes, like with the hadith we just took, there's no one say that they have what? Qareen yuwaswisu ilay. Like a qareen, a devil that whispers to him. And so her response to him is what? Hatta anti ya Rasulullah. Meaning even you, O Messenger of God. And he goes, even me, save Allah a'anani. Allah aided me to give him da'wah for Aslam. And now he's Muslim. So you can tell that the qareen is not what? That internal chatter that takes place within you. And the clarity of that also is in what? That when, inshallah, the blessed month of Ramadan enters, what takes place to the devils? That they're shackled. Suffidat shayateen, isn't it? But sadly, we're still left with what? That internal chatter. I'm still the moody old man that I am on the first of Ramadan. Before it was the qareen. I can blame the qareen, can't I, for my bad temper, for me not holding my tongue, ila akhirihi. But when the qareen's shackled, and the ulama say here, one interpretation is the ta'thir of the shayateen. It's the effects are what? Diminished. That they're still quote-unquote roaming, but their effects are what? Mitigated by the blessing of Ramadan. But the qareen, like think about here what the Prophet, because you think the Prophet is giving da'wah 24/7. And think about the moments he's giving da'wah to what? The devil, the qareen that's with him until it accepts Islam. It's a profound understanding. But here, going back to the point, what? The devil is with you, this qareen is with you. And we know that it's manifest or evident where? When we're in prayer or when we're commencing prayer. Right? That when you're in prayer, all of a sudden, every single thing you want to remember comes to you, doesn't it? Oh yeah, I've got to do this, I've got to see so and so, ila akhirihi. Because that's his job, to divert you from what? That blessed reality. In a hadith here that we bring, that's not in the book, it's a question that we heard when we were studying this book with our teachers, that can a devil or can Satan affect a child in the womb? And he brings a hadith here, or we heard this from our teachers, again from Sayyidina Aisha radiyallahu ta'ala anha, who says what? She goes that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam asked me, Hal ru'ya al-mugharrabun? And I'm trying to figure out what there's different types of hal. There's a hal called hal istinkari or inkari. It's a question that's trying to actually rebuke a situation. Yeah? Like, أَتَعْمُرُ النَّاسِ بِالْخَيْرِ وَتَنْسَوْنَ أَنفُسَكُمْ, like Allah says in the Quran, like you call people to good. Do you call people to good and forget yourselves? It's not asking a question, it's an affirmation of something that there's negation of, like inkar of something. So when the Prophet says here, هَلْ رُؤْيَا فِيكُمْ الْمُغَرَّبُونَ, he asked Sayyidina Aisha, do you see from amongst you those who are mugharrabun? So she asks what? Mal mugharrabun ya Rasulullah? What does it mean? Al mugharrabun. And he says, قال الذين يشترك فيهم الجن. Those who the jinn participate in. And what does he mean here? Because I had to look up the commentary on what that exactly means when our teachers were telling us this hadith. It means that what? When human beings have intimacy with one another, and they don't say the requisite supplications or adhkar, they allow what? The devil to participate even in that act. وَعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ. And so the mugharrabun are what? As he says here, الَّذِينَ يَشْتَرِكُونَ فِيهِمِ الْجِنِّ. Those who have allowed the jinn to participate in this act. Then it can affect what? So we know, for example, there's a supplication that if someone is about to embark on the act between a husband and a wife, Allahumma, as the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Allahumma jannibna shaitan. That prior to commencing, you say what? Oh Allah, remove the devil from us. وَجَنِّبْنَا مَا رَزَقْتَنَا. And وَجَنِّبْنَا شَيْطَانَ مَا رَزَقْتَنَا. And keep the devil away from that which you will bless us with in relation to what? Offspring. And the Prophet said, if someone says this, لَا يَدُرُّهُمْ. The walad, the child, will not be affected by this. Okay? So here, look, moment you're born, you're touched by the devil. And again, this is where this tension starts. Yeah? This is like the call of the devil, that I'm with you now from the cradle to the grave. Yeah? You have your job. You have your job to do something as what? As a guardian, as a parent. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Devil's there, okay, so are we. Counter it, right hook. With what? The adhan. Bearing in mind, like I said, the ulama say that the child understands what's being said. So when you're saying, Hayya ala salah, Hayya ala falah, come to prayer, come to your good. Because it's close to that soul reality, that soulful reality, there's an understanding of the soul within that child about what's being said. But the qareen is with you. And we allow the qareen by virtue of what? What we're saying here. This is an example here of the danger of not being people of what? Dhikr. Because the famous narrative about those two devils, one was like emaciated and weak, and one was like healthy and had lustrous hair and the like. And the devil that had lustrous hair and was strong was because the qareen of his human just forgets all of his adhkar, forgets to mention Allah when he eats, ila akhiri, when he bathes, ila akhiri, all of these adhkar that we have. So we have these adab, even for those intimate moments there's an adab. But the weightiness of that hadith is weighty. In that, look, if you don't say these adhkar, because that's what they are, I always use the analogy of what? This is immunization for you from all of those harms. You know, everything points to what? Be a person of dhikr. Everything points to what? Be a person of dhikr. And cling to it like your life depends upon it. Hold on to it like your life literally depends upon it. Like even today, I remember there was Habib Mashur, rahmatullahi alayhi, there was a radio program in Dara Mustafa where people would ask questions, and I'm going to get to a point. And so someone asked him about Surah Al-Waqi'ah. The Surah Al-Waqi'ah is a protection from many things, from amongst them faqah, from poverty. And so he said that the question came on the radio, it was a radio program, that the hadith in relation to what? The Waqi'ah, it's man qara'a waqi' bil-layl, that whoever recites the Waqi'ah by night. And he said that the practice of what we've seen in the schools, in the seminaries, that they're recited after Asr, which is known as the time of what? The diffusions of sustenance, the blessings of sustenance, they say, are placed in after Asr. So that's why we recite Waqi'ah, because the Prophet said, whoever's recite Waqi'ah bil-layl, la yamussu al-faqa, that person will not be affected by poverty. And so Habib Mashur said, he goes, that's true, but he goes, what's the masa, what's evening defined as in the Arabic language? You know, nighttime, masa, evening. And if you look at the dictionaries, the lexicons in the Arabic language, al-masa'a min al-zawal. It's from midday up until nisf al-layl, halfway through the night, halfway between Maghrib and Fajr. So reciting Waqi'ah after Asr is still classed as what? An evening or nighttime recitation. Okay, why make mention of that? Say, for example, you have a habit of reciting Wird al-Latif, which should be read, Qubayl Maghrib, before sunset. Okay, but now you're going to go somewhere, and if I go there, I'm being invited to a house, and I'm going to be there, and maybe won't be able to recite it. Yeah? Recite it before you go there, as long as you're in what? In the Masa, in the what's quoted as what's understood as the evening time. I.e. what? Never ever abandoned a wird, a regular litany that Allah has blessed you to make it regular in your life. Never ever, which means even to the extent that what? Okay, so we went somewhere, we knew we were going somewhere, we forgot to recite it before, and now we're there till midnight. When on the way home, still recite it as what? Istidrak, meaning make it up, like a make-up recitation. Because there's consequences to this that you may not realize. I.e., if you don't, this hadith to me was like kind of like, oh, subhanallah. Because we know the hadith about the devil eating with you, the devil bathing with you, as long as, meaning if you're remiss in relation to your adhkar. But do you think about one of the most intimate acts between human beings? He's with you there. And now look, this has what? يَشْتَرَكْ فِيهِ الْجِنِّ. They can be affected what? Because he's saying that if you say the dhikr, Allahumma jannibna shaitan, wa jannib a-shaitan, ma razaqtana, at that moment, what's the conclusion of the hadith? La yadurru al-walad. The child will be totally unaffected. So we should be people of what? Dhikr in every single state. There's an adab. There's a dhikr for everything, even in those what? Even in those intimate acts. Now, and so he goes on to say what? That it is sunnah to give the adhan in the right ear and of a newborn, and the iqamah in the left ear. Okay, again, these things are devotional practices. Whether we understand the hikmah behind them, leave your I say logic, not common sense. Leave your logic to yourself. Why am I saying the adhan in the right, in the iqamah in the left ear? The child doesn't understand what's being said. Just do it, right? Just do it, and because as Imam Haddad says here, it reminds the child of its fitrah, of its primordial disposition, according to which God has made people, namely what? The understanding of Tawheed. God's Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said what? And he brings the hadith, ma min mawlud, that every newborn baby, illa yulidu al-fitra, has been born upon what? This nature. Right? This nature. A child is born upon a fitra. Wa abawahu, and then it's the parents what? Yahwadano, Yumajisano, Yunasiran. It's the parents that now what? Imprint their reality on that child. By the conclusion is that if the parents are Christian, the child will be Christian, and if they're Magian, the child will be Magian. If they're Jewish, the child will be Jewish. Right? But what's it telling you what? That the child is a gift from God, like a quote-unquote blank slate. And now whatever you are will be imprinted upon that child. And so I said it's that dichotomy of what? The struggle of the nafs trying to take over the ruh, the soul, the higher soul. From the moment a child comes into this world. La ilaha illallah. He then, in relation to the hadith here that we just mentioned, that there's no child save that they're born upon a fitrah, like a primordial nature. And now as I said, the parents now are going to imprint their reality. He's now going to bring things in relation to what? The duties of a parent. And so if page 18, he's going to go on to say it's an absolute duty for parents. But just one thing, which is mentioned on page 19, which I'm going to bring before, which anchors into what we're saying here. He says what? Most of the duties connected to this, in relation to the things that he's going to mention, that is upon you as a parent or a guardian or a teacher, or in the role of a responsible adult, for those who you have responsibility over. Kullukum ra'in. Okay, because look what the Prophet is saying here. He's not saying kullu walidain ra'in, that all parents are shepherds. Kullukum. All of you are. Everyone has a responsibility. If you're single, living in an apartment by yourself, you have a responsibility to your neighbors. Everyone has a responsibility. Everyone has a quote-unquote flock. وَكُلُّكُمْ مَسْئُولٌ عَنْ رَعْيَتِهِ. And everyone has a responsibility in relation to those who are in their sphere of influence. Even like I said, Dave, you're not married, inshallah bless you with good spouses. Say Ameen. Yeah? You're not blessed with children yet. You may be blessed with children. But you're in a position when you are responsible to someone. Okay? There's no la mafar min. There is no fleeing from that reality. Every single one of us has a responsibility. If you accept it, or abba, or you reject. And that responsibility has to be taken very seriously. And so he's saying here that, look, I've jumped the gun going on to the part which is going to speak about different things that a parent should be doing. But he's saying that most of these duties connected to this must be performed by who? The parents and the guardians. Why does he say this when he's going to speak about the number of things that we should be focusing on in relation to the tarbiyah of your children? Right? There's no doubt that children are an immense blessing. There's no doubt. But they're also what? A pain in the backside. And remember that you are a pain in the backside for your mother and father as well. Yeah, there's an immense challenge in helping your child navigate this very perilous world that they occupy. It's an immense blessing, no doubt, but boy, can they be a headache. Right? They really can. And this is why I think I mentioned this lesson, I forget whether this is when I teach in London. It's in the religious council of Imam al-Haddad, Nasaih Hadiniya, about the efforts that one has to go through in relation to the responsibility that's bore upon you from Allah in relation to your child. And like I said, by extension, those who are in your sphere of influence. Why do the books of law, when they give the introductions, they speak about the importance for a husband to facilitate the education of his wife? That's actually, look at why. It's putting a frame of understanding in your mind. It's not about learning a list of rules of do's and don'ts. Of course, that's part of it, to know what's halal and haram in our tradition. But it's about the responsibility. What's responsibility in Arabic? We use it in Urdu as well. Taklif. What's taklif mean in Urdu? You'll speak Urdu. Half of you don't speak English, but... Say that again? Is it? I thought it didn't mean ill. It means being ill. It's painful, isn't it? Yeah, you're entrusted with something. So it's pain. All right, okay. He's changed his mind. Right? That taklif means to be in pain in the language of my people. Taklif in Arabic is to what? It's entrust a responsibility upon you. And so before they're going to teach you about fiqh, they're going to say, well, if you're here, the context of it being in one particular book for a husband or a father, and likewise, by extension, the mother, if you're in a position of responsibility, you have to facilitate these understandings for those who are under your sphere of responsibility. And so he's saying here, after he's mentioning a number of things, that duties are connected, must be performed by the parents. Okay? That first and foremost, you have to live this. Why do I bring this first, and why take a pause on this? Because we do occupy a space or an understanding where we want piety from our children whilst we are corrupt. Right? That's sadly not an uncommon phenomena within our tradition today, within our communities, within our societies today. We expect our little Abdullah and Fatima to be like, however we want them to be in terms of religiously, but we are irreligious or immoral people. Yeah, you can't expect that from your child. It's illogical, because no matter what emanates from your tongue, or if I put my children into I forget the names of the programs here, forgive me, but I know mashallah they run many programs for children, and I outsource the religious education to OCC for my children, then you think you've done your responsibility, or you think you've fulfilled your responsibility, right? But then the children, see a very different reality in their homes or in our conduct or in our actions. You're setting yourself up for failure, and likewise a level of hypocrisy, no doubt. So I think it's important to mention here on page 19, moving before page 18, the duties connected to this must be performed by the parents and other guardians. Okay? That a certain, obviously, Al-Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam was what? He had the unique tarbiyah of who? Addabani Rabbi fa ahsana ta'dibi. My Lord inculcated adab in me, and how he perfected my adab. So the Prophet is unique, khususiyah again. He's getting tarbiyah directly from God. His tarbiyah is lordly. When Allah said, but Allah says to us what? Kunu rabbaniyun, or rabbaniyin. Be Rabbani. What's Rabbani? Al-Arif Billah, someone who knows Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you have to endeavor as a parent, as a guardian, as a teacher, as a person who has a neighbor, you have to be Rabbani. You have to be someone that has to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to what? Impart tarbiyah. Faqidu shay la yu'ti, as the Arabs say. Someone who doesn't have something can't give it. If I don't have it, I can't give it. If I haven't learned something, if I'm not educating myself, if I'm not developing myself, if I'm not being less childlike, not crying for every little thing that happens to me, or crying for every little thing that I want, and then you think your children are going to what? Come out salihin, it's a ghurur. None of us are going to have what? Addabani Rabbi fa ahsana ta'dibi. My Lord inculcated adab into me and how He perfected that adab. That's something unique for Al-Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. But your Lord tells you what? Kunu rabbaniyin. Be Rabbani. And Rabbani and Arif Billah, someone that knows Allah. Everything at one level is what? Whatever, if I learn the simplest of sunnahs, drinking with my right hand, I'm trying to emulate who? The best of creation. That only brought this was why? Because he had that tarbiyah from his Lord. So it all anchors back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from the smallest of things. You know, Habib Umar used to say about, or does say I should say, about Habib Muhammad bin Ali wa Shihab. He goes, we used to learn adab from him from the way he would drink tea. Imagine seeing God in someone just how they drink tea. Interestingly enough, forgive the repetition, adab comes from which word in the Arabic language? Ma'daba. What does ma'daba mean? The place that you eat. That's the what? The litmus test. You're going to learn a lot about someone by watching them eat. So I'm saying even in the, I don't even like saying this, the mundane, sunnah to sit, sunnah to, eat when right, sunnah to take 3 sips. All of this anchors back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because we're doing it not as a list of do's and don'ts. We're trying to what? Habituate the mind, heart and body to act in a way that resembles the being that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loved the most. So it all goes back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so he says here, he says, it is an absolute duty for both parents to protect their child. So both parents, it's the responsibility of both of them to protect their child from everything that might what? Distort this fitrah, warp this fitrah. People now, again, what do they say? Oh, subhanAllah, I think Islam is too hard. It doesn't feel right within me. Feelings. It doesn't feel right. I don't feel good when I come to the Mawlid. I don't feel right when there's dhikr being there. All that tells you your fitrah is jacked up. That's all that tells you. There's nothing wrong with the dhikr. There's nothing wrong with the words of the salihin. There's nothing wrong with the barakah that's in those places. It just tells you that your fitrah has become so warped that when you're placed in blessed spaces, there's something that doesn't sit right within you. Why? Because we've allowed the fitrah to become unnatural. What was once natural is now unnatural, which is why we get these stupid questions. Good luck to those who go to university. Allah protect each and every single one of you. Say Ameen. You're so stingy in Luton. Say Ameen. Placing yourself in those environments, they have a very particular agenda about how they want you to come out, how they want you to think. So therefore, you will find things odd in faith. Why? Because the fitrah has been warped. What is he saying here? It's the absolute translation, absolute duty of both parents to protect their child. Because there's a difference in English language. That what's a father? That speaks about the biological nature that someone has an act to play in bringing forth children. Here we're really speaking about what? The guardian. What's the first part of the word guardian? Guard. clues in the word, isn't it? It tells you what you're supposed to be doing as a person of responsibility. You're supposed to be guarding the vanguards, the borders of your child. So protect your child from everything that might distort his or her fitrah, to raise him well, to protect him from evil nurses. He means here in relation to the breastfeeding period. And seriously strive to do these things, for the hadith says. So again, listen, they don't pick words arbitrarily. Absolute duty. Protect your child. Raise him or her well. Protect them from evil nurses. Seriously strive. That's literally what? One sentence. You have to really make an effort, because just as we said in the beginning of the lesson, as soon as you come out of the womb of your mother, devil's with you. Till death do us part, I'm with you now. And any opportunity I get, they're not taking a day off like we take a day off. They're not taking any days off. So evil nurses, and seriously strive to do these things, for the hadith says, nursing alters nature. Arida yughayir at-tiba. It's a hadith that's coming up in the comment. In his heart they must plant reverence for the symbols of religion, and for the things God has made sacrosanct. The love of goodness, the practice of it, and its practitioners, and its people. Crisis of our age today is what? People disparaging people of piety and people of knowledge. It's an absolute crisis that we have. How easy the tongue can run amok in speaking about people. Particularly here what? Yani ahluha, its practitioners. They must encourage and exhort him to do good, and discourage him or her from, and make hateful for him evil, the practice of it, and those who practice it. Again, warped. Fitrah is warped. People love now sin. Oh, I love listening to music. Makes me feel good. Right? Look what he's saying here. To make these things what? Hateful in the heart of an individual. The practice of it and those who practice it. They must also uproot love of the world and its pleasures from his heart, together with the inclination to enjoy it. And they must neither assist him in enjoying the dunya, nor render it easy for him. Look at that last part here. This is a pure address to every single parent. They must neither assist him in enjoying this dunya, nor render it easy. Make the dunya difficult for someone. We are living an absolute inverse reality here. We facilitate dunya for our children. That's the sign of success for us. Wealth, money, things. And he's saying that, and don't make it easy for them. So the first thing he mentioned here, outside of the emphasis of wanting to take this as an absolute duty and to protect your child, is what? Rida'a, nursing. That he says here in a hadith, look at the hadith that he brings here. Ar-rida tughayyiru at-tiba. That's hadith. That nursing, breastfeeding, suckling actually changes the disposition of a human being. Because the hadith, the words before that are what? Takhayyiru or tatakhayyiru ar-rida kama tatakhayyiruna an-nikah. Pick the person who's going to nurse your child in the same manner as you pick a person who you want to marry. So think about that. Because one will spend a lot of time doing. Is the person apt, right, suitable for brother X or sister X? What are the attributes that they have ila akhirihi? There's an effort that's made there. Although there I think it's a separate conversation in relation to how what criterion people use to pick spouses, as well as all of the variables that come with getting married in relation to family pressures and the like. That's a separate conversation. But the point being here, what? Look at this during the prophetic era. Meaning, choose someone who's going to nurse your child very carefully, just as you are careful in relation to who suckles or nurses your child. فَإِنَّ الرِّضَاعَ تُغَيِّرَ الطِّبَاعَ. Why? Because once they've suckled, once they've nursed, now you've actually imprinted again a nature upon that child. We've taken stories like this before. Firstly, let's just stop and look at Sayyidina Halimah Sa'diyah radiyallahu ta'ala anha. In that when she comes to Sayyidina Abdul Muttalib and he asks her what? He goes, Ma ismuki, what is your name? And she goes, Halimah Sa'diyah. First he asked her the tribe, but then he asked her what her name is. Halimah Sa'diyah. And he says, Subhanallah, al-hilm was-sa'ad, khaslatan, that hilm, forbearance, was sa'ad, sa'ada, felicity, bliss. Two traits that have what? Eternal good associated to them. So just in her name, they're seeing such khair, more than the type of individual she was, who goes on to be what? The nursing mother of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So very careful as to who they're going to what? Allow to suckle their children. Take these things, again, it's the responsibility of who? We don't have that practice anymore, do we? I'm talking about here in the West, or I should say, not that I know of. We don't have the practice of having our children being nursed by other women. It's still a practice that takes place in parts of the Muslim world. We saw it in Hadramaut, that people who had children and they knew that some of the Salihat had children at a similar time and they were suckling, they would go to them and they would ask them to suckle their children as well for that blessing. And the famous story of the great Imam al-Juwayni, Imam al-Haramain. How many of the ulama do we call Imam al-Haramain, the Imam of both the Haram of Mecca and Medina? It's just Imam al-Juwayni. The teacher of who? Imam al-Ghazali. So when, again, the pinnacle of pinnacle, because Ghazali is Hujjat al-Islam, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, who here Imam al-Haddad is going to bring what? Reference him. Read the book on of Ghazali, Riyadat al-Nafs, honing the self, where he speaks about what? Those different metrics in relation to what should be instilled for a child. We're actually going to speak I put them in here because he mentioned it, so it's a benefit that Ghazali speaks about a number of things that a parent, a guardian should be focusing on in relation to the tarbiyah of their child. But Ghazali, the great Ghazali, Hujjat al-Islam, may Allah be pleased with him, is a product of who? Imam al-Juwayni. And Imam al-Juwayni, what? He's doing munadhara, he's giving a debate. And you're talking here about scholar extraordinaire. You really are. Just the books that he's produced, La ilaha illa Muhammad Rasulullah. You're talking about the pinnacle of absolute excellence. And they say that he's debating, and so he starts to stutter, or his memory stutters. And he had like a profound memory. And so they said, Ya Imam, we've never seen this in you before. i.e. that your memory has faltered in debate. And so he says what? Massa or massatain, which means what? It was one or two sips. And they say, what do you mean? And he goes, my father was very concerned about what I would eat from infancy. And so he used to produce his own food, and he would ensure that my mother would only ever feed me this food, or she would only ever eat that food, so that the milk that she would then give to me was purely from halal sources. And think about this. During the prophetic era, chapters in our day and age written from the books in relation to how concerned they were about the food that they... And the conversation in today's day and age is about what? Meat. Chicken and meat, and that's like where the conversation lies. Why does Sayyidina Ali, karramallahu wajhahu, have flour sent from Medina to Iraq? Flour we're speaking about. We're not speaking about meat, chicken, or like where there's a lot more dubious entities related to that. Flour. He's having it shipped from where? Or transported from Medina all the way to, because he knew the source of it. So here, he goes that my father used to make his own food, so then my mother was only allowed to eat that food because he knew it was purely halal. He knew exactly the source of the food, and that was a food that was nourished my mother, that I was suckled on. So he goes that one day my father comes home and my mother was cooking, and there was a jariyah, a servant girl from the neighbor's house, who was suckling her child, and she was in our house. Because my mother was busy cooking, and I was crying for food, this servant girl started to suckle me. My father comes in and snatches me away. Why? He doesn't know what food this woman has eaten to now be breastfeeding his son Imam al-Juwayni. And so he goes, what? He goes, massa or massatan. It's those sips that have made my memory today falter. Look how he attributes it to that time. So here, look, the great Imam, the first thing, because we're speaking about infancy, who or what do you place in the mouth of your child? La ilaha illa Muhammad Rasulullah. Obviously, I'm just as an aside, when Allah says, يرضعن أولادهم حولين كاملين لمن أراد أن يتم الرضاعة. Let the women nurse their children for 2 years for those who want to complete the duration of رضاعة, two lunar years. فإن أرادوا فصالا عن تراض منهما وتشاور فلا جناح عليهما. And if they want to then cease potentially before that on mutual agreement, فلا جناح عليهما, then there's no blemish on them for doing that. There's many people today that may have issues in relation to the production of milk, or they're unable to. We're not speaking here about exceptions to the norm. But here, look, I think what's interesting is that here, when the ayah of this verse is here, this is the verse that we just mentioned. وَالْوَالِدَاتُ, let mothers, يُرْضِعْنَ أَوْلَادَهُنَّ, let them suckle, nurse their children, حَوْلَيْن كَامِلَيْن, for 2 complete lunar years. لِمَنْ أَرَادَ أَنْ يَتِمَّ الرِّضَاعَ, for those who want to complete the duration of what? Of suckling. Ibn Kathir says what? هَذَا إِرْشَادٌ مِنَ اللَّهِ سُبْحَانَهُ وَتَعَالَى. That Allah is literally telling you, giving you irshad, tarbiyah, about what? How you should feed your child. Why is there a verse in the Quran about this, if you think about it? Because prior to what? Prior to the Quran being revealed, was it not the practice that people would suckle their children? Of course it was. Prior to Islam, they would send their children to what? The desert climes for a number of reasons, to give those women the opportunity to earn money to suckle and nurse their children. So if it's a practice that's taking place, why does Allah have to come with it in the Quran that's recited 1,400 plus years later? هذا إرشاد من الله. That this is irshad, this is right guidance from God in and of Himself in relation to the tarbiyah of your children. Because they're giving a lot more than milk. Why do we have a hadith where the Prophet said, طَعَامُ السَّخِي دَوَى, that the food of someone who's naturally generous is healing. وَطَعَامُ الْبَخِيلِ دَاء, whereas the food of someone who is miserly is harmful, it's an illness. Food, is it not? But there's realities that you imprint upon those things. There's a reality of someone who is naturally generous, who imprints this upon what? The food, which makes that food for you what? Healing. And there's a reality of someone who's miserly, that gives you the same food, that now actually acts as what? Harmful, an illness for you. Likewise here, choose, like I said, تغير الطباع, literally transforms your nature. So whether we're speaking about here suckling in and of itself, or now by extension what? If it's irshad from God, it's primary. But thereafter, what does it mean? Thereafter, be very careful about what you put in your children's mouths. But what was the first thing we said? What line did we bring before the points that he just mentioned here? Parents have to be doing this. We expect these things for our children, but we have to be living this likewise as well. We have to be careful about these things, because your tiba'a, your nature will change. I've said this before. This is being recorded, isn't it? I know when my wife's unhappy with me when I eat the food. Not that she puts glass in it or anything, but I can tell there's something I've done wrong. And I know the love that I feel from the food that she gives me when she's not unhappy with me, which is most of the time, inshallah. But it's the same person making the same food. You're imprinting a reality upon that. Al-Muhim, so he speaks here about, first and foremost, about nursing. And then he goes on here. So again, I'm bringing, a line forward where he says, in the volume of disciplining the soul, which we just mentioned, Riyadat al-Nafs, in the Ihya, the Imam, the Proof of Islam, may God have mercy upon him, Imam Ghazali, has written comprehensively about how to discipline children and bring them up well. And so he mentions about 20 sub-points, which I think, inshallah, with your permission, we will do next week, as opposed to start it today. Is that okay? Okay, barakallahu feekum. Any questions? I think they're complaining about the heating here. Someone's complaining about the heating. Bismillah.
I wanted to ask a question. So you were mentioning about children and parents' duty to, like guardianship and stuff like that.
in terms of your responsibility as an extended family member. Absolutely. The nucleus, the nuclear family, it's a bid'ah. It's a new phenomena where it's like, father, mother, and then 1.4 children. If you're to engage traditional communities, the child is like the public property of the extended family. And there's even a greater one of our brothers was in Mauritania, and he was saying about Sheikh Mohammed Haddamin that he had a very young boy, and his father's there, so the grandfather of this boy, and so his son kept on coming to the father, and the father kept on placing him on the lap of his father, and then he'd come off of there. He didn't want to sit with his grandfather, and he'd come to his father, and he kept on picking him up and placing him on his father. And so the students had asked Sheikh Mohammed after, said, "Why did you keep doing that?" He said, "Children are for the pleasure of the grandparents." And I mention that as a point because how many of our sisters today, and I know put my own family in this, it is not accusation against anyone, how many of you could, on giving birth to a child, give your child away for 2 years to be nursed somewhere? It's such an alien concept to us, isn't it? Some of you maybe are looking happy, I'd love to give my child away. But as a norm, we'd find it very difficult, wouldn't we, to give our child away for 2 years? But that's a prophetic tarbiyah. And so, in answer to your question, the child and the responsibility of the extended family, of course they have a responsibility in that regard. And they should be part and parcel, and made to feel part and parcel of the tarbiyah of that child. And if they don't want it, they still have a responsibility. Because the child's going to look up to who? Parents, uncles, aunts, the elders. And so if they're living in that type of environment, they have an immense responsibility. The problem more so lies where? Is when people are not on the same wavelength in relation to the tarbiyah of a child. So say, for example, a parent doesn't want the child watching TV, but now the uncle and the aunt or the grandparents or the like, you're being too harsh. That's a negotiation that people have to navigate with hikmah and love. But no doubt that there's a responsibility on the extended family, and so it should be. The child should be exposed to the extended family. What was the wisdom of giving the child away for nursing? So the two things that they mentioned in the books of Sirah, and these are two primary reasons. There could be many other reasons for this. One of the reasons they say was that they wanted to go to the desert climb so the child becomes more robust. When you put your child in those types of environments, they will become more robust. In the days of Mecca, although it's odd when we think about it now compared to the pollution of our time, they said that, again, the cleaner environment, we're talking about cleaner air and the like in the desert climbs as well. So it's health reasons were there. And then the third main reason was for the purity of language. And it's not just to become eloquent in language. I've said this to you before. So there could be words in the peninsula that have come from outside of the Arab peninsula. Like, I was with some Syrians yesterday, and they said this word dughri, which I used to hear a lot when I was in Damascus, it's not an original Arabic word, but it's used in Damascus a lot. It means straight ahead, but it's from Turkish. So people are affected when there's like an admixture of different cultures and things. They're affected by other people's languages, aren't they? Whereas in the desert, where people are remote, the language is more preserved and untainted. And language, you all think, me and you all think the way we do because we're English. Well, I never say that in public, but we've come through a system where language has a lot more than just words that we articulate. It's a way of thinking, it's a way of speaking. So likewise, Arabic, it's not about just being pure in the way you speak. It actually makes you think a very particular way. عَلِّمُوا أَوْلَادَكُمْ لَعَمِيَةِ الْعَرَبِ فَإِنَّ فِيهِ الْأَخْلَاقِ. Why is the hadith that, teach your children the Lam poem, the L poem, because in the L poem is high ethical conduct. So language is a lot more than just being eloquent or being able to speak with eloquence. It's actually imprinting again upon you a very clear way of understanding the world. Inna anzalnahu Qur'anan Arabiyyan la'allakum ta'qilun. Your Lord tells you this. Why did Allah could reveal the Quran in any language? And He doesn't just say, I've revealed it in Arabic. I've revealed it in Arabic, perhaps that you may be people who actually use your intellects, la'allakum ta'qilun, so that you get it. So there's something beyond just learning the language, but the fasaha, the purity of it, no doubt, was with the desert dwellers. Wallahu alam. That there'd be a negative effect to the child if they were detached from their mother for a period of 2 years. Again, I think it's. I think we live such, and all of us. This isn't about women. We live such abnormal lives. Everything about our lives now is abnormal, and I actually think detachment is good. I think it makes you closer to Allah. I think it makes you more reliant upon Allah. I think you would pray for your child more. I think that prayer would be more sincere. I think you'd look forward to seeing your child when you would see them. Not that you couldn't see them during that period either, but I think there's a lot of benefits if we just think and reflect about that take place that doesn't happen naturally in the way that we live lives now. I think, children now, I've said this many times in classes, having had the blessings of being in many different parts of traditional Muslim lands. If I come across a 7 or 8 year old and compare them to like a 7 or 8 year old in this modern cornucopia that we call the United Kingdom, I feel like I'm talking to a well-rounded, mature child in those situations, and I feel like I'm speaking to like a mollycoddled infant here, and they're a product of who? Of us. So again, I'm not blaming the child even here. That they are a product of us, that we've put them in these environments and placed them in these contexts. That's what they're going to be like. But a child that's, again, raised where they speak to children like with maturity. And saying that, there's such an innocence still to those children, which I think our children are stripped of as well. So it's not as if that he's like, a 5-year-old man with a suit and a briefcase. He's still a child. He's still innocent. And there's something really wonderfully beautiful about that innocence. But they understand, these different things because of the environment they've been raised in. I wouldn't say that, for me, again, the benchmark for perfection is what that first generation did. There's no doubt in my mind, heart, whether it's a spiritual understanding or an academic understanding, that was the best generation. Ours is to try and replicate that and die trying. I may not get the hikmah sometimes as to why that's the case, but you put yourself on the side of the equation, that's right, I'm wrong, maybe Allah will give me an opening to understand it, or I've got to figure it out. But I think that's why I asked the question. It's very abnormal. Abnormal, it's nadir, it's almost non-existent, that people now, our mothers and even our fathers, can think about placing their children in an environment where they're away from them for 2 years. But if we were to just unpack it, I think there's so many benefits that we can actually think of. And again, history is attest to that fact anyway. Those people came out, just profound people. Sayyidina Hamza was likewise suckled by Sayyidina Halima. So it wasn't, it was a norm of that generation. Wallahu alam. Did you have your hand up? Yeah, Allah Barak Fik. Yeah. It's good to say it and then duck out. So ghaira, having like this. So I said I translated it as jealousy. When Sayyidina I said ghirtu, meaning I had ghaira that the Prophet was going out, and I didn't know where he was going. And then even when he asked me, ghirti, she goes, why shouldn't I have ghaira? Right? Is that a positive thing or a negative thing? And I'm putting in inverted commas the word jealousy, because I can't think of another translation for it. That's exactly it, yeah. That's probably a better way of me rendering it. That for someone to have ghaira over someone, it's like you have a protective jealousy over them. Right? It's not an unrestrained jealousy. Hasad is a negative jealousy. Innal hasad ta'kulu al-hasanat kama ya'kul an-nar al-hatab. That hasad consumes good deeds just as fire consumes firewood. But to have ghaira over someone, we should have ghaira over our people. If you don't have ghaira, this protective jealousy, this anger towards someone, then anyone can, make you move with the sands of time. You're like subject to someone just, men should have ghaira over their women. Women should have ghaira over their husbands. That's something which is natural and healthy. And if it's not there, then it's actually a problem. And I say that again, that God knows what they put in the water, or, men and women aren't men and women anymore. And I really feel, I'm not even saying that because of the estrogen and stuff that they put in the water that we drink. Don't drink tap water if you can avoid it. Yeah? How this again affects your reality. So now you become submissive, accepting of all of these abnormalities. Because the ghaira of Sayyidina Aisha, that's why the word is used, ghaira. She has a protective jealousy over the Prophet ﷺ. And why on earth should she not? We have protective jealousy over the Prophet ﷺ. Men should have ghaira for the women. Women should have ghaira for their husbands and the like. طيب. جزاك الله خير. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.